Hi, welcome to June's Ask Mel Box question and answer session. Tonight's edition is all about mental health, and I'll get onto that in a bit. But I thought what I'd do first is get all of my announcements and bits and bobs of parish notices out the way, so that we can get down to a discussion about mental health and music from my perspective, and hopefully that will welcome you to join in with a discussion about your own experiences with mental health and music, if you have stories to share. So first things first, next Wednesday, kicking off in East Anglia in Newmarket, I've got a brand new series of monthly Melodeon classes starting. This is being run in association with Eatmut and EFTUS, and we're starting with a 2-hour session for mixed ability, except absolute beginners, unfortunately, for this precise moment in time. And the class will cost you £35 for 2 hours. And after that taught session, there will be a half an hour kind of Q&A where it gives you some time to have a bit of one-to-one adjustment and kind of like a doctor's kind of surgery, if you like, a Melodeon surgery. So if you want more information about that, you can go to eatmt, eatmt.org.uk, and click on Mel's monthly Melodeon classes. I've also got the Halsey class. I've got my last one this Friday, but they're starting again in September and running until December. So that's on the southwest side of the country. I'm very busy driving around all over the place. So yes, more information about that on the Halsey Manor website. And I've also got a weekend of Melodeon workshops coming up in Whittonstall, Northumberland on the 14th to the 16th of June. It's in just under 2 weeks now, but there's still places available on both the Melodeon Play Group, which is designed for absolute beginners through to improvers, non-confident players, and group playing. So the ethos is about kind of just breaking down those barriers and having a really good time doing something pretty simple and friendly in a group with your Melodeon. And on the Sunday, I've got my fourth edition of Thinking Outside the Box, which this time is focusing solely on how we can play better together. So I take down and kind of break down all of what it is to play as a group, and we'll be looking at playing in duos and trios and then as a whole group, little games designed to get us to relax and to listen and to communicate through our bodies. So it'll be a whole day focusing on how we can better communicate with each other when we're making music together. All to do with speed and tempo, when you can start a tune, when you can finish a tune, when you can change a tune in a set. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's the fourth in the series. Every edition so far has had a different theme, and I think this one feels quite current. They've got so many people who always say, I don't know how to play in a session, or I always kind of go to pieces when I'm playing in a session. I get really freaked out and really stressed. So this is the kind of event for you. So more information about that on not my website at the moment, unfortunately, but my Facebook page. There is a Facebook event, Thinking Outside the Box, and there's also Northeast Melodeon Play Group, which has got threads on Melnet and all sorts of different places, and you can get in touch with me, workshops at melbiggsmusic.co.uk, for more information and booking. So that's all the kind of parish notices I've got at the moment for upcoming things. Gig wise, actually, I've got a Morai gig in Colford, the Last Thursday Club, and that is June I want to say 27th, but yes, that is June the 27th, coming up in a few weeks' time. So if you want to see me and Joe Freyer and Sarah Matthews, Morai will be playing there. And then we've got some summer gigs coming up as well at different festivals. Okay, so I meant to start tonight by writing down a bit of a list about what I wanted to talk about, but I didn't get round to doing that, and I'm feeling a bit guilty about that. But that is one of the biggest things with my experience with mental health, is that I feel like I commit to a lot of things and I commit wholeheartedly, but then when it really comes down to it, I kind of find myself being quite flaky. And that's always really bugged me. I was never always like this. I think it's really since stepping into adulthood, going to university was a really big change for me. And I sort of witnessed myself really struggle socially until I found a really great group of people and really got involved with sports. I played ultimate frisbee at university, and it really gave me an escape from a degree which really wasn't the right degree for me. I really enjoyed it in the first sort of year when everyone was together. It was a biological sciences degree. I did molecular biology at Cardiff, if you want to know. And yeah, and as it became more specialist as the years went on, and we got kind of more and more focused on specific proteins doing specific jobs and all of that kind of stuff, it was just kind of information overload. And I'd realized by that point that it wasn't a subject that I wanted to take further into my career, but it gave me a lot of tools, and just completing the degree showed me what I was capable of. Progressively throughout my time at university, I was kind of batting my head against a kind of brick wall, but I didn't really know why. I was just quite stubbornly carrying on with a life and a choice that I wasn't happy with, and it wasn't making me very happy. So I kind of found coping strategies and ways of dealing with my time there and the workload, and not really dealing and coping well with not understanding things and not wanting to understand something, but yet being in a situation where I had to, because it was a degree that I was paying for and needed to kind of complete. So, as I say, Ultimate Frisbee was a big part of that, but also the Melodeon. I started playing Melodeon in 2006, which is when I started university. I've always been into Morris dancing, and when I moved to university, one of the biggest things for me was who's the local side, and I had a reasonable choice. But for Border, which was my passion at the time, there was only one choice, and that was Widder's Border Morris in Chepstow, and their gaffer, Mick Widder, if anyone knows Mick, shout out to Mick and Ness and everyone in Widders who I know. They lent me their spare Melodeon, and it kind of went from there. It gave me the biggest kind of rescue. And I can remember sitting in my student digs, probably pissing off my housemates, to be perfectly honest, even though I kind of double checked with them and everything. Just playing through round and round and round tunes that I was listening to on CDs, just kind of had up on the computer all the time, listening to Spires and Bowden. John Spires is the reason I started playing in the first place. He kind of gave me that, you're young and cool and hip in your football kit, you know, and your denim jeans and white trainers. You don't seem to go with the folk scene. I first saw them perform in 2001 when they were very new and very young kind of lads. And it wasn't until 2006, as I say, that I picked one up to begin with. And yeah, so I was instantly besotted with the thing, and I spent hours and hours just plugging away at it, and I got pretty good pretty quick. You know, like within I was always playing at sessions and just trying to get better, and I was going to workshops at festivals in the summer, and then I started playing out with Widders within a year, and I kind of really kind of grasped the instrument quite wholeheartedly, and I was really looking at pushing my peripheries and learning the hard tunes and not giving up on the hard tunes, and always kind of feeling frustrated that I couldn't play the hard tunes. So I've been there. I've got lots of students who are in that kind of, this is such a good tune, but I can only play it on the right hand. I sat down and made myself play with both hands. You know, it was just the way it was. And I would like plow 3 hours into a tune just to avoid doing like my coursework, or, you know, the write-up of the lab that I'd just done, or whatever it was. Somehow I did graduate with a 2-2, even though I did not a scrap of coursework. And specifically my oh my god, what's it called, all of the maths and things that you have to do with data. There was a particular module, statistics. I hated it, didn't understand it, didn't need it, because I was given a literature review for my dissertation, so I just had to sit in the library and read stuff. Yeah, so I honestly don't know how I got a degree, but I think looking back, I don't regret that decision. At 18, I was like art or science, and I thought science was the sensible option. But actually, my passion was art and design. And I actually ended up, after graduating university in 2009, I made the decision that I would go back and do a second degree. But it wasn't until 3 years after that that I made that move and applied to UCAS again. Yeah, so once I graduated, and it wasn't ever diagnosed, but certainly from things I read about mental health and have read over the last kind of 10, 15 years, I had some sort of nervous breakdown, mental breakdown. I was kind of not getting up, not washing and eating for days and weeks on end. And it really was my mum who kind of made sure that those basic things got done. The other thing is that I didn't complete my degree in one whole go, so I had to go back in the resit period in September and do one final exam because I missed an exam. I remember waking up in the morning at 4 a.m. thinking I could get up and cram all of the revision that I hadn't done over the weeks for this one final exam that I didn't want to do. And I remember waking up at 4 a.m. and just watching the clock tick round until 9 a.m. and then just watching it for the whole 3 hours that I was meant to be in my exam. And I thought, do you know what? This isn't you. You used to be diligent. You were kind of like front of the class, top of the register. You know, I loved school and I loved learning, but this was something different. And yeah, I thought, I think you're not well. So I went to the kind of university counselling, which was pretty piss poor, to be honest. Didn't really offer me anything. So yeah, I was kind of spent that time after graduating hoping that somebody would see how bad I was. I was pining for my parents just to kind of take me to therapy or kind of deal with me. But it wasn't until like a number of years later that I realised that I had to kind of make those decisions for myself. And it was up to me to kind of realise that this isn't how I wanted to go along with my life, and that there were things I wanted to change. There were things I wanted to do with my life that I wasn't capable of at that time. So I spent 3 years in a pretty crappy job. I was a geophysical surveyor for 3 years. And during that time, my health got worse, physical and mental. I had a urinary tract infection for most of that time. I was doing lots of field work. We don't take a portaloo with us, so I'm going to leave your imagination to sort of deal with how you deal with a water infection and not having a toilet. It wasn't nice. And yeah, just progressively, lots of outdoor space and lots of exercise was fantastic, but I wasn't dealing with this. And somewhere in that mix, I started seeing a therapist. All the time I was playing music, I was going to festivals, I was doing dancing, I was going to workshops. And it was during this kind of 2009 to 2012, 2011, it was that I went to the Wantage workshops, which are now the Adderbury workshops, that Joe Freyer and Jerry run. And I met Andy and Joe there, Andy Cutting, and kind of really had this moment where I was being seen by people who were able to give me that feedback. I didn't ever believe in myself, in anything. Like, my self-confidence was rock bottom, and really it's only in the last couple of years that that has changed. So yeah, it's been a journey, and I've always realized that it's one step at a time. There were things I wasn't happy with in my life and I wanted to make better. And I went, as I say, I decided to go to art college, and that was a huge breath of fresh air. I'd saved some money from the job that I had, and I ploughed that into my degree. And just having that creative space, it felt really odd to begin with, because I was like, didn't really have much of a timetable. You're just kind of left to be and see, you know, kind of be guided by your tutors. And it was a very different world to the laboratory and the biomedical science and stuff that I'd done at university. Although I had I think that scientific process and the thinking, that really suited me. And there was a biology and society science communication module that we did in my final year that really interested me in how science is hugely important, but how you communicate it to the general public is like even more so. And for me, there's a lot of crossover in visual art and science, and how those kind of two things, the science communication, can be done through visual art. Philosophy, I started to kind of explore these things during my art degree, and mental health and music, and my experience of the folk scene and the kind of the ritualistic elements of, I go to this festival with these people, and then the next weekend we all go to a different festival. And that's kind of been my life, in that you have these kind of points throughout the year that you do the same things, and they become really important because of the people that you're sharing it with, and the geographical kind of place that you're in, and the journeys that you take. So I started to explore a lot about occupational health science, occupational therapy science. And I had a brilliant friend, Beth Everard, who lent me loads of books that I didn't give back for years because I just was poring over them. And it really helped me to kind of just set my mind in place of the journey that I'd been on and why these things were so important to me in supporting me, keeping going, staying happy, kind of just moving forward, but yet still not quite kind of checking in up here and going, are you actually okay? Do you need maybe to seek professional help? I was still in that kind of, come on, God, not doing anything kind of particularly outrageous to draw attention to the fact that I wasn't mentally well, but not yet in a place where I could make that decision myself. I realise I'm rambling a lot, but I've got to a place recently where I've not been in a perfect place. I'm getting towards the end of a session of hypnotherapy, which I've been in since September. Been seeing a hypnotherapist locally for 10 months, and it's pretty much been weekly or every other week, so quite frequently. I'd hate to think how much I've spent because it must be in the thousands by now. But I never thought I was going to be over my anxiety. I was diagnosed in 2012 with moderate anxiety and depression, and I was put on citalopram, which I came off in 2016 or 17, I think. So I was on it for quite a long time, but I realised that it was always a crutch to me. I always wanted to be able to do it by myself, and I think that's a lot of people's kind of worries when they go on medication, that they're going to get kind of addicted to it, and it's always going to become this thing that's there. But I always saw it as, this is just a helpful way for me to kind of remain above water. Like, I'm not going to drown if I'm kind of just on this medication. I can kind of bob around at head height. And it was always a stopgap. Like, I took medication, but I was still working on kind of other ways of freeing myself. I never saw it as I take a pill and I'm well, because that's not what mental health medication does. If you're kind of on the brink of that, then don't expect to take a pill and it will just make you better. Generally, it makes you worse before you feel like you're kind of on an even keel. That was my experience of citalopram, and from a lot of friends that have taken it, it's also been their experience as well. I'm glad that rambling is good, Ed. Thanks. I'll get to the question in a bit. So yeah, I went, after being put on medication, I'd had a little bit of therapy, as I say, at university, and I can't remember when I started seeing a therapist outside of university. Part of me thinks that it was earlier than 2011, but only by just. When I lived in Worcestershire and I was living at home with my parents, there was a lot of freedom because I didn't have to kind of pay rent. I was kind of in a very cushy position, so it gave me a chance to fund private therapy, and I've always seen private therapists. I did have a 6-week stint with the NHS, and it really wasn't very good, and I know the NHS are fantastic and they really do, and I've got nothing against the NHS, but when it comes to mental health services, I think there's just been so many cuts, and it's just, the support isn't there and it's not good enough, and I think it's causing a lot of issues in the country with people that aren't actually able to afford private therapy and psychotherapy, and I've always kind of put my own money into it at the detriment of eating well and buying healthy food and having money. I mean, I've run over my overdraft so many times because I've had to pay the therapist, but I've always seen it as like a means to an end, and that it's been the best money I've ever spent. I've always felt that after every kind of therapy session or therapist that I've been with for a period of time. So I can't recommend private psychotherapy enough. Counselling is something slightly different. Psychotherapists tend to be more highly trained. They've studied longer at university, maybe got a master's, and they understand the way that the human brain ticks a lot better, I find. Apologies to any counsellors out there, but I want to talk from my own perspective, and I see so many of my friends who are on very similar paths to mine, and I just want to be able to say, hey, stop, go and see a professional, because you can try and get through it by yourself, and you'll make decisions and you'll make progress and you'll make yourself feel better in the temporary space. But I think in order to kind of get all your cards on the table and just have somebody else go, look, here's all my shit, can you just tell me where I'm at? Am I okay? what of these things can I kind of get rid of, and what are the things that we can make changes. I went round and round in my head trying to do that. I'm feeling very frustrated that I couldn't make myself well, because I'm an intelligent person and I couldn't find a way by myself. That's one of my biggest kind of frustrations. And yeah, so psychotherapy has been a huge part of me learning who I am and what I've been through and why it affected me in such a way, and has made me feel stronger because of it, because I now understand the things that I went through, in romantic relationships, in friendships, in professional kind of basis and environments, things that happened that I was really, really hurt by, or didn't understand. And now I do, and I kind of realize that my thought about what life was as a 16, 17-year-old schoolgirl is complete trash. And what a romantic relationship is with somebody, complete trash, you know. And actually there are so many different ways of living life, and it's really made me go and see the bigger picture and just think it's okay, you can do whatever you want, you know. Other people live their lives and they kind of do what they want, and I think it's really helped me just to kind of chill out a lot about I should be doing this by now, and you know, maybe I should be having a baby by now. Those thoughts are like well in my past, but they definitely were like part of my early 20s life for sure. And then coming to the conclusion of going freelance was definitely a kind of step in the right direction for having all of this creative energy after my degree, and just kind of going like, you can be creative, you can make it work, you can be an artist. You didn't believe it at 18, but baby, you can go and do it now. And also because of the way that my mental health was, and I just felt that going freelance would give me the opportunity to be flexible with my time and choose when I work and choose when I take holiday, and be kind of really flexible with that. And I really find that it's worked out well for me in that essence. But what has been really, really hard is when I have had bad bouts of depression, or I've been really low in my mood, or like my energy has been really low, is that I find that I'm really flaky with my students. And just me saying that like publicly with 6 people watching, because I've been talking for 22 minutes, but I feel like I'm in a place now, right, to say that I am flaky. And it's not to do with anything to do with my students, because unfortunately people have thought that. And a couple of years ago, I sent out a massive email, like really, really long. Shit, I wasn't going to cry. Jesus, I wasn't going to cry on camera. And I'm not tonight, but you can sense the emotion, right? It's a scary thing to admit. And 2 years ago, I sent a big email to my whole student base just to kind of say, this is why I've not been around lately. And I got this like huge wave of emails back from people who were kind of in the same boat. And that for me was like, Jesus, we have to talk about this stuff. You know, we can't just keep going through life keeping it all bottled up, because the conversation is so important to overcoming, or to talk to somebody and then they take the first step towards them getting better. It's like a hand coming into a dark cave and pulling somebody out of it. And since that time that I sent that really, really scary email, I've been having a lot more conversations with people, kind of on the down low at festivals, or with friends, or via kind of text and messaging services. And it's always been positive. You're talking about some really shit things that have happened to you or that you're going through, but the feeling of sharing is really, really positive. And I think tonight, the reason that I kind of wanted to get this off my chest and kind of open up the conversation is just to prove that I'm a small business owner, and the face that is on my product and on my kind of business is a real human and with real emotion. And I want to kind of open that conversation, and kind of, I will play some music in a minute, because I haven't said enough about how music has been a huge part of my journey and my recovery. Certainly in some of the bleakest times that I didn't know really what I wanted to do with my life, it was something that I could lose myself in. And that's when I started writing music and finding melodies that felt really good and really kind of aspirational. And I've got loads of those now. Lots of them that you've heard with Morai and that I teach, but there's loads more that I really want to do something with. So I'm going to play something now, but then I want to talk to you about an idea that I'm having about recording. And yeah, let the emotion drop from my voice a little bit, because God knows what this is going to look like on the playback. Anyway, we've got a few people watching, and we've had some comments. We've got Echo Cornet. I don't know who you are, but hello. Oh, Scott, lovely. I will get to meet you. That would be fantastic. I hope you can make the whole weekend. Feeling it for you, and good to let everyone know what is going on. It makes such a difference. Yes, it really does. And I've been really hesitant to share this in a professional sphere, but I just got to the stage where it was like, do you know what? It affects my work so much at times, even though I hate that it does, but it does. And I see no reason to hide it anymore. You know, so it's out there. So if you've got anything that you want to sort of ping at me, questions about anything that I've just talked about, or questions about what you might be going through and how I could help with that, let me know in the comments section. I know there's only 6 of you lovely people watching. I'm going to just play a little tune. And this it wasn't the first tune I wrote, because I can't remember that anymore, but it was something that I wrote after the first Wantage workshops that I went on with Ian Dedick, Joe Freyer and Floss Headford. And they really filled me up, and I remember crying all the way home. It was pitch black and I was crying driving, so it was like terrible, like driving circumstances, but it meant a lot to me. And I was in this really like Monday blues, and I just found these 2 tunes. So this is Peter's Pub and Pull Me Another Pint. So you might imagine what we were doing most of the weekend when we weren't playing music. Unfortunately, Peter doesn't own the Shoulder of Mutton in Wantage anymore, but the pub's still going, it's still open. But when Peter ran it, it really became this kind of other world that we stepped into for the weekend. And he really took us in and took us under his wing, and was a fantastic brewer. He had about 15 beers behind the bar. It was absolutely beautiful beer and stunning catering. It was a vegetarian pub, and yeah, so I dedicated these 2 tunes to him. So I'm just going to put the camera down so that you can see what my fingers are doing, and have a little listen to this while you're thinking about some questions. So there you go, a couple of tunes. Quite like playing them. They're nice. They came out together as a pair. So yeah, we've had some questions. Thanks to everyone for your messages. And Ed asks, so how do you, I'm assuming, how do you translate that dark cave into something so light and uplifting? You mean the tunes or just life? I suppose both, really. I don't see any kind of distinction between life's outputs and what you go through. You know, my output is music and anything that I create, and my experiences feed into that in a really totally subconscious way. You know, it's not like driven at all really by anything other than just sitting back and thinking and analysing. I'm a big analyzer. My God, if you know me at all well, you'll know that I overthink things, and my bandmates tell me constantly that I think too much, but it's just how my brain works. I'm always trying to figure things out, and particularly when it comes to my own health and me not achieving things in life that I want to achieve, but I'm being held back by some bit of shit in my life that I want to get rid of. I'm going to bloody well work hard at that to get rid of it, so that I've got the energy and I've got the mental kind of clarity and space to go and attack those dreams. I used to kind of say for a long time that I had this kind of vision, and it was recurring. It wasn't really a dream. It was just this kind of place that I was in, and it was always a dark cave, quite small space, like, you know, stone, dank, dark with kind of like soil floor. But you're in there, you haven't got any light, and you can't see any light that's kind of coming from the door. But yet, I knew that there was a really beautiful meadow just on the other side of my cave. And that meadow was full of gorgeous flowers and grasses, and it was kind of a clearing in a wood. And the woodland, beyond the woodland, I didn't really know what existed, but I knew that there was something beautiful and sunshiny outside of my cave. And for a long time, Jesus Christ, for a long time, I felt that it was other people's job, or I put a lot on other people and the experiences that I had with them for coming out of the cave. So I can remember in my long-term relationship that I felt good because I felt I'd met someone that was kind of in the meadow in his life, and he'd found me and brought me out into it. But then when that relationship ended, it was so painful and returning to the cave was awful. And miniature kind of examples of that would be really great weekends with friends at festivals, and then I'd kind of step back inside the cave again during the week. So that was my life for a long time, that kind of expectation that being with other people is what I need. And yes, I do need that, but not because they're in charge of making me feel better, or that I put that importance on them, or that responsibility on them. That was a really big learning lesson for me that I only really cracked when my relationship broke down in 2016, and I went into a long period of therapy and started to unravel all of that. And I started to build my own self-confidence and belief in myself, because really that is only in the last 2 years that has really started to come forward, and that belief in my skills in all areas of life were worthwhile and of value. and that it's not other people's responsibility to tell me that or make me feel that or make me feel good about myself. Those things, they come from us, but we have to be in a place where we're able to feel that and make that happen. So I feel that now I'm in the meadow. I can see the cave, and occasionally I go and sit back inside it, but the door's never closed. I know how to bring myself out of that now. But there are occasions where I need to go back inside to give myself space from the world for a bit. And while I'm there, sometimes creative things happen. But actually, the lovely thing is that I've realized I can be creative when I'm out in the meadow, when I'm happy and there's sunshine. And that's been a really new experience for me. And I can write well when I'm in the meadow. I always thought that I wrote best when I'm in the cave and I'm in a really dark place. And yeah, I've written some great stuff that I'm really proud of when I'm in that place. But I can do it when I'm happy now. I don't have to kind of be recycling this old kind of habit cycle where I put myself in the cave. And there are ways I know how to do that. I eat badly, I sleep badly, I don't do my exercise, and I'm back in the cave quite quickly, which has been proven in the last few weeks. So for me, it's usually things like that, they're received. I don't work hard at those kind of tunes. I don't work hard at any of my tunes. Sometimes I have melodies that come to me and I'll just hum them into my phone, and then they kind of sit there for a bit, 2 or 3 years perhaps sometimes, and I'll come back to them and be able to kind of work on them. But it takes time. I sometimes kind of find myself with a window where I think I'll just play around that tune for a bit, and it might turn into 3-4 hours where I've barely stopped, just kind of noodling around, and it's probably morphed into all sorts of different areas, and maybe a new tune has emerged, or you've got sort of generated arrangement ideas for that piece, and it just feels really good. So giving yourself time to be with your instrument is really important, and it's really difficult in modern life. And if it isn't your job or it isn't your career, giving yourself the permission to have that time to spend with your instrument, or listening to music or being around creative activities, is really, really difficult. And I get that. And I think for me, I wanted it to be my life. I realized it was a really good thing for me to have, so I kind of made it my life. And I think everyone should feel that they've got that kind of permission, that value to do that. If there's something that they're putting off that they think they could make a really good go at, bloody go out there and do it. You know, don't hold back. Don't do things because you feel you have to do them for any reason at all. I know that there's always people that rely on you, but I think you've always got to follow your heart. That's what I started doing. I followed here rather than here, because this was leading me astray. So follow your heart. Okay, I realize me rambling on isn't like bringing in the questions tonight, but yeah, I hope there's some value in this that people are hearing. But please come up with questions, or even just kind of conversational points, things that you're kind of sparking off that I'm saying, or tunes that you want to hear, or you know, whatever it might be. I liked how throughout the tune a wee light came in on your face. Yes, I was reading some really nice messages from people, and thinking of some nice things, and it just kind of made me smile. Okay, so I did get a message come through from my friend Tammy, and it was something that I said that I could answer with kind of a personal experience. I just need to go and find it. It's well, I'll find it on my phone. It was sent through my Facebook page, and for some reason on the browser version of Facebook I can't find it, but I got it on my phone just here, so just bear with me a second. Oh, at least I've stopped crying now. Oh, come on. Okay, so the question was, I love hiding behind tunes. You switch off to everything else and it always makes me smile, especially when it's for dance. It helps to focus the mind, but motivation at home to pick up when I feel rubbish is really tough, by which I mean non-existent because I feel I'm not good enough. So how do you find enough motivation to just pick it up? One of the things that I still do this to a certain degree, but I'm really aware that I do it, and I kind of shut it down immediately with myself. But I did it a lot to my detriment, through like kind of when I graduated and got more into the folk scene and sort of started to get to know people more. And that was that I compare myself. I still compare, but I do it a lot less. But I compare myself to other people on the scene, and particularly like other Melodeon players, which is like really easy to do. There's some really great players in this country and around the world, but particularly ones within my friendship circle. And then just kind of other musicians that I kind of see in sessions or on the stage and kind of aspire to in certain aspects, and kind of have that two heads on, like that's really good, but that's also not what I would do myself. So it's that sort of that analytical thing again that I can't switch off. So I think I'm always going to have that to a certain degree of watching acts. And I've learned a lot about stagecraft. From a young age, I've been really into theatre, and I did a lot of amateur dramatics. So how to perform, how to take on a higher energy version of yourself in order to kind of present yourself to the world. That's something that feels natural. But then when I came to do my own stuff, things that I performed, things that I created when I was very early days of Morai, I was shitting myself on stage to the point where I'd make a mistake and I'd start tearing myself apart on stage. And hey presto, loads of other mistakes started happening. So you don't feel any better, and you just think you're giving a really shit performance, and the audience can totally pick up on all of these kind of facial expressions of, you know, they know exactly when you're screwing up, and that, you know, you're letting your bandmates down. And that really kind of like, that was a big voice demon on my shoulder. I called it my demon. And it doesn't really appear anymore, thank God. But I think I've found a place where I feel like me on stage. I feel like I can be real. I can make mistakes and I can own them. And I practice a lot harder because that was one of the biggest reasons I was making mistakes in the first place, is that I didn't know my material well enough. So in order to reduce my anxiety, I practice now, right? I mean, it's obvious. But that really helped me realize that if I put the effort in, I got better. And I got to a place where I felt like I knew the instrument well enough, and I could kind of get around the mistakes that would happen, you know, slips and trips on chords, or, you know, the odd note. Or for me, I play a lot of right hand chords with Morai, and so if you get one finger wrong, it's going to sound pretty awful. It's going to not sort of work with the harmony that we're working vocally or whatever. But I just think it's live. It's being played for maybe not even 2 seconds, and then you've changed chord. And I used to freak out a lot about those sorts of things, but now I see them completely differently. I prepare to succeed, and if I don't quite hit that mark, I don't take myself too seriously. And that was one of the most beautiful things that Andy Cutting said to me during our time. He mentored me for a year as part of an EFDUS program. And actually people say, oh, you know, I bet you learnt loads from him. And yeah, I did, but we barely touched our instruments. You know, the time that we spent together, and we had five kind of days across the year together, it was all talking. I was so kind of amazed by his career, and I just wanted to know kind of about him and the way that he'd kind of created himself. And one of the best bits of advice he gave me was like, don't take yourself too seriously, you know. And I'm the sort of person, I care too much about things to the point of, well, I'm too shit, I couldn't do that, you know, that's not going to work. But now I see it differently. I believe in myself now. I can say that. I know I can do a good job if I put the work in, and I aspire to be better. And all of those things kind of help me just to kind of pick up the box and know that if I spend an hour on something that's been bugging me, it will be better at the end of the hour. And I've stopped looking at other people in a way that kind of doesn't help me. It's not that I don't listen to them. I hear everything that they're doing, but I am able to kind of put a bit of a shutter down and just kind of witness that and not put myself in that situation. And I think that's one of the most important things when you're a beginner, is to kind of put that shutter down and realize that, hey, I'm going at my own pace. I can only put this amount of hours into it because of all the other things I do with my life. And just to note your milestones, be really aware. This is something I did even before I knew I was doing it. But every year I'd go back to maybe the same workshop, or I'd go back to the same festival and play with the same people in the same session, the same pub. And I'd think, oh God, last year I could hardly play anything, but look at me now, I can do this and I can do this and I can join in and I can watch that geezer over there and I can pick out his chord sequence, all just through listening and watching and staying up until 4 a.m, because the bar hasn't closed and they're not kicking you out. So it's making the most of every opportunity. And I know that you do, Tam, but I'm just kind of like saying broadly for everyone. It's about the hours you put into it, but it's also that approach mentally, is to govern your emotions around it really, really carefully, particularly if you are out on the scene and you are seeing and playing and experiencing that with a lot of people who you consider to be better than you. They're only better than you because they've probably been playing longer and they've collectively, accumulatively had more hours with that instrument. But there's nothing to say that you can't be. If you put those amount of hours in, it's like anything. They say you put 10,000 hours in to become an expert at something, or I don't know if it's expert status, but you know what I mean. Put the hours in, and you will reap the rewards. And I think it's about also sticking with one thing so that you can mark that tune's progress. Don't be a scatterbrain. I don't think that helps you kind of mark your progress barely at all, because you've got lots of kind of pots on the boil and plates in the air, and actually it's really hard to keep lots of things going. So if you knuckle down and go, right, I want to get the left hand nailed for this tune, fucking sit down and do it. Just put your mind to it, and you'll notice the difference immediately, I think. Okay. So, gosh, got just under 10 minutes, over 10 minutes left, and it's mainly me yakking on. But I think this will be something that I wanted out in the public domain anyway, as a kind of record for me of where I'm at, the fact I'm able to talk about it. And also it kind of cleanses the air a little bit for some things that have happened to me recently, and just helps me to kind of go, hey, you're good, you're okay. So I just mentioned the thing about Tammy Ed, so that was all about kind of playing. If you watch it again and rewind back, we're about kind of 45 minutes in. I got a question from David Henley. I have reached a stage in my playing where I would like to start improvising. I play mostly contemporary French music. Could you suggest some ways that I might approach this? Are there any rules? So it's not quite in the mental health genre, but I'm happy to answer it because I think you're here and you want to know these things. So I would like to start improvising. I play mostly contemporary French. Could you suggest some ways that I might approach this? Okay, so if I'm honest, improvising for me up until last September was just, I can hear the chord progression, I can hear what key we're in, so therefore I know roughly what notes. I don't ever think this is an A, this is a B. That's not how I approach the instrument. I approach it by pattern and feel and what I hear. I can sight read, and I do know what they are, but it's not my immediate go-to when I'm in that improvising zone. And I kind of just play around and hold things down, and if they sounded right, I'd go along with it. So that's one way, and I think that's a very valid way to rely on your ears and rely on what you feel in the moment. There's not enough value given to that process. People want to know, and they want rules, and they want sheet music that tells you things. That is also a way forward, but I think for folk and emotive playing, go with your gut, go with your ear, and sort of see what comes of that. But I went on a fantastic workshop with Anne Leopold, who, if you're not familiar with her, she's a Belgian diatonic accordionist who has a background in jazz. She studied jazz at the Brussels Conservatoire, and she's a phenomenal player, one of a kind. There's no one else like her in the world. And she just happens to play a diatonic accordion, but she completely transcends the instrument. You know, it's like watching, I don't know, watching her perform. There's a lot of physicality, to what she does, and her face. She's on another kind of realm, really, and it's just lovely that she's kind of transmitting this world of hers to us through her instrument. And because of her jazz background, a lot of the workshop revolved around chord patterns and understanding about chord theory, which is something that as a flute player at school I never learned. So when I was kind of in that classical music world, I never learned about chords, and I never played piano. And actually I've just borrowed one of my dad's because I want to start learning about chords. I want to know how harmony works and what the important notes are and what triads are and why they're important and what they do. So yeah, that kind of world of analysis, I need to actually get the keyboard out of the bag first and kind of find an online tutorial. But my progress from here, and it's already started. I did a project recently where it really helped, is to kind of find those chords, find your chord sequence, and understand your modes. Modes are really important, and again, that's ongoing learning for me. That's current very much. But modes and chords, and then you can kind of understand that if you go from one chord to another, what notes have changed? Are there any notes that have stayed the same? She started talking about sevenths and ninths and half diminished, and I don't know what those. I know what a seventh is. It just means you hold down the seventh note of the scale that you're in with that chord. But the other terms, please don't ask me because I don't know. But it was really good to understand when we saw this chord pattern, this chord sequence, was to know that, oh, so we've got this kind of map now. If we know what these chords are and what the notes are in these chords and how they relate to each other, if I go from this note in this chord as a kind of tone to hold on to, when the chord changes to this, if I move to this note in my improvisation, it's going to give it this feel, or it's going to sort of jar, it's going to be discordant in this way, which is going to give that kind of sensation. It's a really new area for me, but it gave me that bit of a map to see that if you know what your chords are, then you know what notes you can use in a safe way, and you know what notes you can use in a kind of blue note, jazzy kind of way, which gives you that bit of unctuous feel. But even though I sometimes make mistakes in those moments, and they're not the note I plan, and it sounds really, really naff and discordant, there'll always be someone in the room that I'm working with. It's like, oh yeah, that was great. It wasn't what you intended, but it was really, really good. So you've kind of got to be open to other people's interpretation of what you do in that moment as well, I think. So hopefully that answers your question there, in some way or another. I want to play a bit more music. This is a tune that I wrote. It wasn't in a dark time, but I think I might have played it before, but it's a really nice night, and we've got very twinkly light here in Derbyshire. And this is a tune I wrote called Shive Light in Spring that I wrote a few years ago now. Me and my mum went on a really nice holiday down to the New Forest, and I was sat out in the gardens of our Airbnb, and there was washing on the line that was kind of blowing like big Morris hankies, and birds were tweeting, and my feet were very warm for the first time that year, and there was lots of that dappled speckled light that was kind of just playing through the leaves of the trees and onto the floor around me. And I've always been mesmerized by that kind of, by light and the way that as it appears on the walls of your house, how it can kind of grow bigger and kind of fade away. And that for me is a very visual cue for making music. And I had this melody for years, and recently I've discovered something quite nice that I wanted to build into it as an arrangement to kind of introduce the theme. And I just want to show you a little bit of that now. It's not complete by any stretch of the imagination, but it's an idea that I've had that I really want to show you. So yeah, this is called Shive Light in Spring, and it's an arrangement idea that I've got that I really like. Actually, what am I doing? I'll leave it up there. We're not in a lesson. Normally I put it down in a lesson, but I'll put it down there. So yeah. It uses the left hand in a really interesting way that I loved. As soon as I discovered it, I was like, yes, this is good. Okay. How'd it go again? I'll get there in a minute. Oh, this is embarrassing. I didn't practice it before, so that's you know, I didn't practice, therefore I'm doing a shit job. But it's not internally affecting me anymore. Etc. You can find the rest of that tune on my rest of my YouTube channel, but maybe poorly demonstrated, but it's really cool. And then when I found that, I was like, that's like really detailed dapples of light just kind of dropping through. And then I built it with a drone. And then I thought, well, I wonder if I can do that and play the melody at the same time. And I've had to make a few adaptations to the melody initially just to kind of let that fit. But I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I wanted to do with the tune. And that actually came to me. It wasn't in a, this is what I was saying earlier about not being in a dark place and making stuff. That was just, I was just really tired. I'd driven back from Halsey Manor. I'd spent the day there teaching and then had a 3-hour drive home. And I just thought, I want to carry on playing. I was kind of in this space. I've been teaching the tune that day. And I thought, oh, maybe it's time to try and arrange this again and come up with some ideas. And I just sat down at my parents' house, which I did a lot of writing in. It's a really nice acoustic space. And it came to me. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I'll just have to be really tired from now on to come up with ideas rather than like horribly depressed. Anyway, another question. We're running out of time. I've talked a lot tonight. Thank you so much for those that have stuck with me to watch. And I hope that it's inspired you and made you think and made you realize there's probably loads more I could talk about, but hopefully that essence of music being really important to me, the Melodeon being really important to me, and where it's kind of got me and why it's so special to me is yeah, and the ways that it's helped me, and hopefully I've communicated that. Blah blah blah. Anyway, on the mental health front, I have found that doing less with critical people and spending more time with the more positive people, dancers, musicians, has greatly increased my enjoyment. Simple really, but not always obvious when you get your head stuck. My God, yes. I find I think we all, I've often been complimented on the fact that I'm young, I'm 31, but I have had some stuff in my life that I've wanted to get over, and I've worked really hard throughout my 20s to do that. And a lot of people have said, oh God, I wish I had your foresight when I was your age. You know, I've lived most of my life with these things. Whatever age you get to, and as long as you're working at yourself and kind of taking baby steps and being kind and gentle on yourself, but always with that motion of going forwards. Doesn't matter what age you're at. I think, you know, we all get there eventually. But I think I've been through that, where I hung around with the people I thought were right because they're the cool kids, or they're the ones that get the gigs, or they're the ones that get the PR, or whatever the shit is, you know. And it's all it's kind of a jealousy. I don't feel I'm a jealous person, but I'm human, so I experience that emotion. And it's kind of a, if I hang around with them, maybe it'll rub off on me, you know, not believing in myself enough that it would happen to me because I'm me and I'm good enough for that sort of stuff to happen in the right scenario, when I meet the right people, when I'm able to put the right email in the right direction. But yeah, the amount of damage that's done by hanging around with the wrong people and listening to the wrong kind of criticism for many years of your life, it's yeah, damaging. But I'm pleased that you kind of worked that out as well, Nigel. And I'm happy to see that you've kind of gone out and played with different bands and musicians and are just going from strength to strength. I need to catch up with you properly, but I'm listening. I'm hearing good things, and I'm seeing who you're playing with. So I'm really, really happy to see that. And other people, Effortless Mastery by Kenny Werner, or Werner, a great book on the mind and music. Thank you for that. My only book to date would be Musicophilia by Oliver Sacks, which is a series of case studies to do with music and the brain. And I love dipping in and out of that. And I find the whole thing fascinating. Anyway, we're at an hour, but I didn't get to tell you this idea that I've been having. And I hope that you, I mean, there's 7 people here. Maybe I can win you over. I've been thinking about doing a recording of my music. I'm not sure at the moment whether I want it to be a solo project, which sounds a bit dull, you know, just me in a recording studio with my Melodeon playing stuff, maybe doing a bit of layering of ideas, because there's some kind of minimalism, rhythm layering and kind of polyphony that I want to kind of play around. So there's that idea, or whether I kind of spend a bit of time myself thinking about the kind of musicians I want to work with, or the sort of instrumentation I want to work with, and tread carefully there and make sure I make good decisions and know that it's right for me. But essentially, I want to do an album of my music, because there's some tunes that are going unused that I feel could be real big things for me. And I just want to see if that would be something that you would put your money into in some kind of crowdfunder. And if yes, what kind of rewards would you like to see? So have a little think about that. I'm going to put something on social media, because I've never done a crowdfunder, and I don't know what people would want as a, you know, a gift for their lovely donation in advance of an album. So yeah, so Tammy, Ed and Nigel seem really, really keen for that. So I've got my little fan group tonight. Thank you very much. So I'm going to round it off there, because I probably will ramble on for hours otherwise. But yeah, a small but perfectly formed audience tonight, and hopefully many more will see this in the coming days. But yeah, I feel lighter. I was ready to say this, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you in real life very soon, if that's going to happen. Always come up and say hi at a festival. I'll always try and make time to say hi and stop and have a little chat, particularly about mental health. That's always going to be something that I feel very open to talking about. So yeah, keep the conversation going, and I'll see you next month. All right, bye.